Did you know that the stories that served as inspiration for the creation of Moana's plot are completely horrifying and eerie, full of bloodshed, dark tales, and even facts that border on the extreme of the bizarre? The stories, and most importantly, the facts that brought to life the story of one of Disney's greatest successes, are simply surreal and brutal. And we've gathered all the gruesome and incredibly cruel details to tell you right now. The bloody legacy of Maori culture. We need to start with the very foundation that involved the actual development of this Disney film. The entire history and mystique portrayed in the movie Moana is inspired by Maori culture, one of the world's most complex and rich cultures, belonging to the last people to be colonized by Europeans, for various reasons, as you'll soon understand. One of the most common and well-known aspects of this culture is the haka, the war cry of the Maori warriors, which we can still witness today, especially in competitions where the New Zealand team participates, primarily in rugby. But when we talk about a war cry, it's not something symbolic, but rather literal. This is because, aside from having a culture and mythology brimming with incredible stories, the history of the Maori people is simply marked by death, blood, and wars that seem to have no end. Long before contact with the white man, the Maori, much like the majority of tribes inhabiting some of the over 11,000 islands in Oceania, engaged in bloody and extremely brutal wars amongst themselves. It is speculated that the main reason was due to food scarcity, leading the tribes to fight over each other's resources. Truly terrible things were done to members of defeated tribes, ranging from enslavement to even cannibalism. Another gruesome practice adopted by Pacific tribes was to decapitate and preserve the heads of defeated warriors from battles in sacred urns. They removed the eyes and brains from the heads of their defeated enemies, stacked them, and left them out in the sun to dry. After this, they placed them in their urns. In a bizarre manner, the Maori used these urns as a form of currency, especially with the English colonizers, who traded muskets for these macabre urns, which became exotic items for the Europeans. Armed with muskets, the Maori had one singular goal, and you'd be mistaken if you thought it was to drive out the English themselves. No, their deepest desire was to finally exterminate the enemy tribes they had been warring with for centuries, and towards whom they held a quite literally deadly hatred. And indeed, that's exactly what happened, with entire tribes being decimated by others who now possessed firearms. There are accounts of fierce massacres of entire tribal groups, and others who ended up migrating to other islands to avoid complete annihilation. Yes, for sure, Maori warriors are some of the most formidable in history, but at the same time, they were also some of the most brutal. And some of these characteristics were inspired by one of the most revered figures in the tradition of the Pacific Island peoples. Which brings us to the true story of Maui. Undoubtedly, Maui became one of Disney's most beloved characters after all the success Moana achieved. The truth is that this demigod is indeed one of the most famous and cherished deities in Maori culture, and among other peoples of the Pacific region, acclaimed and known from New Zealand to Hawaii. And the truth is that each island, with its own culture, has a different story about Maui's origins and exploits, but they all have something in common: his courage mixed with his mischief. However, contrary to what many believe, the stories of this Pacific demigod are much more eerie and shadowy than you can imagine. His origin varies from being the son of a god and a human woman, or even the son of two humans, later elevated to the status of a demigod due to his sinister deeds. For example, in an inexplicable manner, he captured the largest fish in history, which became the largest island in the world, the North Island. Maui's canoe became the South Island. This is how the Maori people explain the creation of the two islands that now compose the country of New Zealand, the homeland of the Maori. Additionally, Maui was friends with the birds and learned to transform into them, possessing a hook made from the jawbone of an ancient god who had died long ago. But the most ominous thing, Maui's final adventure, occurred when he descended into the depths of the underworld in search of immortality. Up to that point, it seems like an adventure story like any other. The grim detail is that to achieve this, he had to enter the body of a gigantic being, the goddess of death. However, while he attempted this grotesque feat, as he was about to enter a place we could say was extremely intimate, one of the birds accompanying him laughed, awakening the being who immediately crushed Maui, bringing a tragic end to the journey of the legendary hero and demigod of the cultures of the region with the most islands in the world. But while the Maui in the film was indeed inspired by an extensive and bizarre collection of legends, another character in the movie was inspired by another individual who is considered the real-life Moana. The truth is, in the legends of the Polynesian, Hawaiian, Rapa Nui, and Maori peoples, there is no reference to a character quite like Moana, with all her bravery and perseverance. This doesn't mean that she didn't have a real-life inspiration that motivated her creation, even influencing her design and abilities. We're talking about Kala Tanaka, a globally renowned Hawaiian navigator known for her nautical skills and route calculations. Kala's exceptional skills, among the best in the world at what she does, were inherited from her father, an experienced navigator who was part of a team that journeyed over 4,000 kilometers between Hawaii and Tahiti in an ancestral canoe in 1976, an act that had revived a spirit that had been dormant and nearly extinguished among the tribal peoples of Polynesia, the art of long-distance navigation in rustic boats. After all, that's how these tribes populated the thousands of islands where they still live today. And as part of this historical legacy, with tribal blood coursing through her veins, is Kala Tanaka, who demonstrates that a woman can develop similar skills to what Moana exhibited in the film. However, surely one of the most powerful abilities of the 2016 animation's protagonist was her capacity to restore a heart to where it truly belonged. This brings us to the dark story of Te Fiti and Te Kā, goddesses of the earth. While watching Moana, it becomes clear that the film's major antagonist is Te Kā, the great lava monster responsible for banishing Maui and also capable of doing anything for the heart of Te Fiti, the goddess who created everything and then laid down to rest, becoming a vast island. And as she rested, her most precious possession was stolen by Maui, who desired to have the absolute power of creation. I don't know if you caught the reference, but remember that in the mythology of the Pacific peoples, Maui also played a prank on a sleeping goddess. Well, that's precisely the connection. As you all know, in reality, Te Kā, the irrational and seemingly mindless monster, was in fact the same entity as Te Fiti, but stripped entirely of her emotions. We could say that Te Kā was precisely what Te Fiti used to be before she developed her heart, thousands of years ago. In other words, when Maui stole the goddess's heart, she reverted to what she truly was in the past, a mindless monster that destroyed everything in its path, wreaking havoc. And with destruction comes the curse, just as it was happening to the islands and Moana's people. And with the curse, eventually comes death. The truth is, Te Fiti and Te Kā are two sides of the same coin, where death and life inhabit the same space and even the same body. This causes creation and destruction to occur, in one way or another, depending on the mood or the presence or absence of consciousness from the one who truly holds the power to perform either of these actions. It's evident that Te Kā's body is essentially hollow, containing nothing but molten lava inside, and in her chest lies the spiral, indicating the space where the heart should reside, giving her sanity and the opposing powers of creation and life. The truth is, even after Te Fiti stops being covered in incandescent lava and becomes shrouded in plants and flora, she is still Te Kā. In case she loses her heart again at any point, she will transform, becoming utterly irrational and fixated on killing and destroying. This well represents the concept of duality and how light, while illuminating, will always cast shadows as well. The seemingly demonic appearance of the being capable of giving life is something that can send shivers down anyone's spine. Just thinking about the possibility that two such distinct things can be so closely intertwined. This is the truth behind the sometimes eerie story that gave rise to the movie Moana. Comment down below if you were aware of these bizarre facts that surround one of Disney's greatest successes. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming videos. Until next time, bye-bye!